intuition said, like, here's the thing, if I'm sitting at home watching someone show a product and I don't see someone that looks like me,
totally.
How do I know it's going to work for me? Right. And I was like, this doesn't make sense that you have one age and one skin tone and flawless skin. This doesn't, but they were giving me the best advice they knew. They wanted me to win. So I was in this spot, right? Like so many of us get in this spot in life where our gut's telling us one thing and then experts are telling us another.
I was going to ask you, do you feel like if anyone would have said yes or invested or whatever from him or anyone before that, do you think it would have been successful if people did believe in you?
I mean, there were definitely people along the way that did believe. There were. I just believe in the timing of things. And I believe in trusting our gut and going with our knowing, you know, with everything.
And what if he would have said, I'm going to give you $1 million or whatever it is to invest, and I'm going to take this much equity? Do you think it would have been as successful of an exit? Or you think you would have been driven to serve more at a higher level with that support and with that backing? Or would it have made you more complacent in some ways during that process?
Having that. I don't know. I mean, I think the only thing that would have gotten in my way is if he owned the majority and wasn't a great partner, because I wasn't driven by the money. Like, I wasn't. I was driven by, you know, what I know I'm born capable of giving. And also just, I loved our mission. I knew what we were doing. We were shifting culture inside the beauty industry. And, you know, there were a lot of people that believed in us along the way. And I mean, with L'Oreal, we got a champion inside of L'Oreal 3 years before we actually did the deal. And she kept wanting them to, like, you know, she's like, look at what this brand's doing, look what this brand's doing. And we would do meetings and they'd end in no's. So it was 3 years of that as well until they acquired us. But yeah, there were people that got it. And then a lot of us learned this lesson. Once we did get into all the retailers and started doing really well, then they all believe in you.
Of course, once you get results.
When you make people money, they like you.
Of course, they want to be a part of your success. You know what's interesting? There's a meme online of a kid, of a little child learning to walk. And it says something like, you know, when a child is learning to walk, they fall over hundreds of times. And they hit their head and they scrape their knee and they, you know, they cry and these things. But at no point do they think, maybe this walking thing isn't for me. They don't say, I'm just going to crawl for the next 80 years of my life and just crawl everywhere. They eventually keep getting up and they learn to walk. They balance, they hold on to something, right? You've got kids, and so you've seen this firsthand. They never stop trying to walk. Why do you think we as adults stop trying to walk into our dreams or into opportunities when we hit ourselves one time, we fall one time? Why do you think we stop when as kids we never did when we were learning to walk?
I think I've never answered this question before, so I'm just going to pour it right out to you, my like how I really feel about that. I think kids have a knowing inside, an instinct. They want to walk, and they just think that they're going to figure it out. They see people around them walking, and they just do it. It's like a knowing, and nothing's telling them not to trust themselves. And I think that as we grow up, I think that everything around us starts to tell us not to trust ourselves. Like self-doubt is so huge. We get and just to use my own example, and some of the stories that I share for the first time ever in the book is like, it's like when you're in the spot of all the experts telling you they don't believe in you, or it could be other people's opinions, right, telling you they don't believe in you. It could be literally no proof of your own dream or idea that it's going to be successful, right? In those first 3 years of this journey of It Cosmetics, there was no proof. It was like no signs, right? Other than women were starting to post their own befores and afters and spread the word online, which was great.
So you were getting some sales.
Yeah, we were doing about 2 to 3 orders a day on our website.
Were you doing were you going and showing it in person at a live events? Were you doing QVC at this point?
No, not. So QVC was our big first yes, and probably the scariest. Probably the biggest life and business lesson I've ever learned. Was
when did that come? After 3 years?
Yeah, after 3 years.
So the first 3 years, were you going to grocery stores and
I tried
everything. Going to the fairground,
any trade
and anything,
show,
yeah.
anything online. We
Farmers
couldn't afford
markets.
to advertise.
Right.
Any different beauty event. I mean, we would. My friends and family would walk into any Ulta or Sephora and be like, and they knew they didn't carry them, but they'd be like, "Can I talk to the manager? Do you carry It Cosmetics?"
Yeah.
They're like, "It what?" They go, "Oh, It Cosmetics is so good," and they would try to hustle for us.
It's very Sarah Blakely-esque, where her friends would go and like place orders and make it all sell out.
It was that. It was just trying to hustle. And the other thing is all the no's, like every time Sephora or QVC or Ulta would say no, like that was one thing, is that I didn't take it personal, right? That was one, I did a lot of things wrong. That was one thing I did right. And the second they would say no, you know, it hurt, it sucked, obviously. But it's like, okay, I would literally, Lewis, I would decide to believe like it's going to be a yes, and I behaved accordingly. Like I would say, okay, thank you, but one day it will be a yes, and I'm so excited for when that happens. And then what I would do is every time we get like a press placement, or we would be launching a new product or whatever, I would send that buyer who kept saying no, and I'd be like, great news, we just got, you know, in this magazine or whatever, and like one day when your customers get to try this in their store, they're gonna love it. And I think they probably thought I was crazy, but I just decided to believe.
You've got to be relentless in following up too.
Yeah.
You can't just hope that they find out about you. You've got to constantly be following up the way you did, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to look at the magazine and see it. They're not going to see your sales numbers unless you tell them over and over again.
Yeah. And I know you're big on LinkedIn and everything. I would literally scour LinkedIn for any person who worked at Sephora or Ulta or QVC.
Friend them and message
everything,
them. Yeah.
and then try to send them a sample. I mean, it was like everybody. It was, and we couldn't afford to hire anybody. So we got so lean and so scrappy that like in the early years, my middle name's Marie. And so Marie got her own email address. So Marie at itcosmetics.com was like head of customer service. And I would pitch all the Good Morning America. I'd be like, our founder's available for, you know what I mean? It was just like hustling and trying to figure it out. And every time I would check in with my gut though, no matter how many times I got knocked down, like I still, even though there's no proof around me, I still kept feeling like this was what I was supposed to do. And I made the decision to trust it through those years of no proof around me. And that's the hard thing. And I feel like when you talk about why does a little kid keep trying to walk, but why do most of us just give up? I feel like I feel like so many people either have never heard their own gut or haven't heard it in a long time. And then sometimes we hear it and we don't trust ourselves, right? And instead of putting our own intuition on a pedestal, we put things like other people's opinions or what our partner's telling us to do or our own self-doubt or what the experts are saying or the lack of proof of success around us. And
how do you think we learn to trust ourselves more?
I think that we have to want to. I think we have to make the decision that we need to want to. And that's hard because you know what? The truth is it's way easier to stay in our comfort zone. It's way easier to make the circle around us happy and comfy and not fearful. It's way easy. And I think that chips away at our soul when we do that. I think every person knows, like I think we know deep down inside if we're created for more and we're supposed to give more, if we have more inside of us to give or to serve or to love or to live. I think we all know that deep down inside. And I think that if we don't do something about it, I think it chips away at our soul. And I think we end up literally talking ourselves out of our own truth and literally never becoming the person we're born to be. I know that sounds dramatic, but I think it's true. And I think that I think that's the easy route. So I think the first thing is you have to want to.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to take a lot of courage to overcome your fears and go into that stuff too. I'm curious, the first time you went on QVC, what was that experience like for you? You felt like you had, a few years of building confidence under your belt, or were you extremely nervous right before that first experience?
Literally everything was on the line in that moment, and that's what made it hard. So you know how you can like know your values and know your why and know all these things, and you think you're gonna like stick by them and live them, and then all of a sudden they're tested. I think like all of us have had that happen to us, and after 3 years of hearing no, we got one shot. We got a yes, and we got one shot on QVC. It's a crazy story. So I go into it in the book on how it happened and how we finally got the yes and all this stuff. But What it meant though was we had one shot in this 10
If it didn't sell, you're never coming back on.
You're never coming back. And it's live, so there's no script. And QVC is, as you know, but maybe not everyone knows, it's a live television channel to broadcast to 100 million homes, and you have to, you're measured in dollars per minute, and so their airtime. It's not like a store where you walk in and you can see thousands of products. Only one product can be live on the air at that moment. So you're not just competing with beauty brands. You're competing with Apple iPhone and Dyson vacuum and Vitamix, all the stuff to hit a certain sales. So we got one shot and 10 minutes. And it was a consignment deal. So what that meant was we had to manufacture all the product, pay for it, et cetera, get it all shipped in there.
Yeah, they don't buy any of it.
No, not in beauty at the time. And then whatever, and then if it didn't sell, we would take it all back without being paid, go out of business. And at the time we were doing just, as 2 to 3 orders a day on our website. And what I learned was we'd have to sell over 6,000 units of our product in a 10-minute window to hit their sales goal or not come back. And so Paulo and I together, and Paulo, which is why I say his name, applied for 22 SBA loans and got rejected. It was the 23rd one in California, actually, that gave us an SBA loan just to cover the cost of the inventory for this one shot on QVC. So you should never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose. But at this point, 3 years in, it was like...
It's like make it or break it. You're
make it or break it.
We're going all in, or we're dying on the sword.
Exactly. And so we said yes and did everything. We hired third-party consultants. And this is where everything I believed in was put on the line. And they're awesome, and they help a lot of people, right? So they help people sell on QVC and retail stores.
They gave you a
amazing.
different strategy that wasn't what you wanted to do, probably.
Right, exactly. They're
all
like,
this is what you need, and you need this perfect model, and they need to be speaking this way, they need to look a certain way.
Because that's what had always been done, and that's what had always worked. And so they wanted the best for me. They were smart and wanted me to win. And they're like, okay, here's what you need to do. Use models with perfect skin, all this. And I would say, okay, but that's not why I created this. And what if and this was pre-YouTube exploding. So I'm like, what if I go on air and just take my makeup off, on live TV and show my rosacea, and what if I'm gonna put models that all different ages and sizes, skin challenges, skin tones, everything. And they were mortified. They're like,
no, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah, and
you're gonna lose it all. Yeah.
And I would say, okay, but if I'm sitting at home and I'm watching and I don't see someone that looks like me, how do I know the product is going to work for me? And but it's really hard when your gut is telling you one thing, experts are telling you another. It's like I couldn't try it both ways. So I flew out to QVC a week before our airing, our one shot, and this might sound crazy to you, but I got a rental car. I sat all alone in the QVC parking lot for a week, every day, just watching the front door of the building, knowing the next time I go in, I'm either going to walk out with out of business or with, and I sat there and I prayed and I cried, and it felt really heavy, to be honest, because I didn't.
It's a big moment.
A big moment, because it was okay, I'm not nervous for TV, but it was it felt like everything was on the line, and I tried to imagine who my customer was, who was watching it, why am I doing what I'm doing, all these things. I remember at one point channeling Oprah. I was like, okay, I remember this time when Oprah was obsessed with the color purple. She told the story on her show, and she wanted it so bad that it consumed her, and she ran around a track and just saying, I surrender all, and asked God to take it from her, because she just couldn't carry it herself. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try that. So I sat in the car, literally singing I Surrender All and crying. I also was imagining, you might do this, I was imagining okay, Olympians, I think that they imagine what happened. Yeah. And so I was visualizing the sold out sign coming up across the screen. I was, all those things. I was sitting in the car just doing everything that I could. And I also just had this moment where I imagined this woman sitting at home, and if I was going to be blessed enough for her to turn her TV on for 5 seconds, what did I want to stand for, right? It was okay, if she's going to give me her precious time, even if she buys nothing, I'd rather her look at the TV and see me showing real women and calling them beautiful and meaning it, because you can't fake authenticity, meaning it. And I'd rather have her for a moment feel like she's seen and like she matters and sell nothing than stand for nothing and sell a shitload of product and hit a sales goal.
Right.
And so it was this moment where I just kind of knew. But sometimes we know what the right thing is, but it's also the hard thing and it's scary.
It's like being in the wrong relationship and your gut's telling you get out, but everyone's like, oh, but they look great on paper, or, you know.
And my parents are happy, or this or
yeah,
that.
and you're like, oh, but I'm torn.
Yes. I feel like everything comes down to our knowing and trusting it in life. You know, and so many people are like, oh, how'd you sell your business for whatever, $1 billion? Like, oh no, that's not the victory. The victory is if we're trusting ourselves and our knowing and where we're supposed to be on our journey. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the victory. And it's like every time I don't do that, that's when I make big mistakes. And when I look back, and that's when I stayed in wrong relationships. That's when I kept employees on too long. That's when all those things. So I'm walking in the QC building and I go into the studio, and there's cameras like we see right now. I know that the second the on-air light goes on, it's live. Yeah, go time.
Wow.
Live to 100 million homes, and there's this 10-minute clock. And here's what I learned right before, okay? I learned, oh, you're not guaranteed 10 minutes.
Oh, if it's not selling at 5, see ya.
So exactly. So you might be a minute or two in, and if you're not in real time doing well, hitting the goals, it jumps. Like, your clock might go from 8 minutes, boom, you're down at 2 minutes, and you're like, and you if you try to sell, nothing sells. You know what I mean? And it's just
if
like,
you're forcing it, then people can feel it.
You can feel it, and you cannot fake authenticity. That's the thing. So it was like, okay.
How do you get sales in 2 minutes if they're not seeing sales when you haven't even told the story of the product?
I know, exactly. You have to be so just. I know. And so, and I had prepared so hard for this. Like,
the consultants taught you how to pitch and how to position and tell a story within a certain time frame and everything.
Yeah, and I literally thought, I walked in there thinking, okay, here's what I'm going to say off the top. Here's how I'm going to do this. And I didn't listen to consultants in terms of models. I'm like, I'm going to show real women all those things, but I'm like, here's how I'm going to, do this demonstration on my wrist, all the stuff I had planned out. And then I did my host meeting a few minutes before the show, and she thanked me for my ideas and said, okay, but here's what we're gonna do. So literally scrapped everything.
So we're not doing that.
Nope. And I had, in that moment, I had to trust her, but I also had to just, like, I know, but they're so good. Oh,
they're pros.
They're such pros. Yeah, they know.
So you had a co-host with you.
Yeah, the QVC host, and then I'm there with the product. Yeah, like the entrepreneur, the founder, and she was amazing and all that. And but at that moment, like, I remember the 10-minute clock, and I remember it was like 9:59, 9:58, and I remember like feeling my heart racing.
This is it.
Yeah, and it's so gross, but I remember like sweat. I remember feeling sweat. And you would talk about how much we love Sarah Blakely. I was wearing 2 pairs of Spanx, and I remember feeling the sweat like dripping. I was like, okay, these Spanx are going to save me because it's not going to come through my dress. But then I also remember thinking, like, I have to not make this about me or I'm done. It's like, okay, this is about, how do I want to shift culture and beauty? Who is that woman watching? Like, if she's going to bless me with her time, how am I going to show up for her? And I remember this moment where my bare face came up on national TV, and then I remember walking to the models, and I was shaking like a leaf. So I had planned this demonstration.
Just like 100 times in the mirror.
Yes, in
this
the
is the way it's gonna look. I'm gonna wipe this thing off. I'm gonna put this on. I'm gonna smile. Yeah.
Yes, and it was so good in my bathroom mirror. And then I'm trying to do this on national television, and this is my hand, literally. And the host grabs it, and she's like, "Thank you, sugar." And she took over, and we walked to all the models, and then I remember toward the very end of, I think it was like a minute left, and she's like, the deep shade is sold out, or the tan shade's almost gone, something like that.
Like, what?
Yeah, and I was like, and then I remember at the 10-minute mark, the sold out sign came up across the screen, just like I had envisioned it in the car, in the parking lot. The sold out sign came up. I started crying.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and they cut, and I see Paulo my husband, coming running through the double doors at the studio, and I'm like sobbing loose. I'm like, real women have spoken. And he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And it was just like, and I was just like, ah. And that one airing turned into 5 that year, and then 101 the next year, and then we did
100?
And we did over 250 live shows a year for
That's crazy.
8 years. Yeah, so I did over 1,000 live QVC shows myself, but we also built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history, and it is right now. At this moment that you and I are talking, it's right now still largest beauty brand in QVC's history. And I only share that because it was 3 years of them saying, no, you're not the right fit, all those things, right? So it's like, at the end of the day, like, nobody can tell you you're not the right fit.
Yeah, and you also got to know the timing of, maybe if you'd done it 3 years earlier, you wouldn't have been ready.
Oh, totally.
Maybe if you pitching it, you would have bombed, and you would have never had another chance. You never would have had another chance, and you would have been done. So sometimes the delayed of people saying no is good for you to figure out, okay, how can I become better? How can I be prepared? How can I sell more? How can I do these other things? So that's what I think we got to think about as well is, you know, how are we going to set ourselves up for something when someone says no?
Yeah, and to not be afraid of it.
Exactly.
I mean, to not be afraid of rejection, and not be afraid of doing it, you know, imperfectly, any of that stuff. It's so important. Oh my gosh, if I ever got afraid of it, never was easy, but if I ever got afraid of rejection, I would have been done. Like, done. Would have never hopefully had, you know, I hope I had an impact on the beauty industry. That would have never happened. I would have never built $1 billion business. You know what I mean? I think it's huge. And I think it comes down to this, is like just really trusting your knowing. You know what I mean? Every time somebody hurt me or said no or whatever, I would go back and be like, okay, another expert said no. Like, is this, am I wrong? Is my gut wrong? Right? But every time I would get still and just know. And, you know, for me, it's how I've never heard God talk to me, but like, I feel, for me, it's faith is part of that. I hear it through my intuition. For other people, it's the universe. Like, it's everything. And I just think, you know, you mentioned relationships. I think that we all know if we're in the right relationship. Like, in our gut, we know. And I mean, I don't think I have a single girlfriend in my life, including myself, who hasn't gone through a relationship where, you know, he's like sketchy, you know, and you're like, oh, maybe his phone did break for 3 days. Maybe, like, right, you know it didn't break, you know. Right. We all know. And I just think that we start to turn up the volume on all this noise in our life, how busy we are, other people's opinions, what our inner circle says, all the things, and we have the mute button on our own gut, and it goes on for so long that we start to not learn how to hear it. And so, you know, for me, and it's not, and I believe everyone has a knowing, and I believe it's always right. And I think that, like, learning how to listen to it, how to trust it, is a journey. It's a process.
I'm curious about...
do you do that in life, though? Like, with people, with friendships? Do you feel a knowing?
No, I feel it, yeah.
You feel it,
it's
right?
It's usually pretty quick for me. You know, it's an intuition. But I also research people pretty extensively. And I look at everything. I look at things that they don't even think I might be looking at. And I learn a lot about people by doing research. So before I even speak to them, I'll kind of get a gut instinct. And then they really need to show me, whether convince me that I'm right or convincing me that I'm wrong, within connecting with them. And sometimes I've been wrong, very few, maybe 2 or 3 times out of thousands of people, where I was like, oh, the things I saw about them, you know, I prejudged them in a way that wasn't accurate. And I took responsibility for that. But most of the time you can get a sense from people, whether you watch a couple videos or just see what they're sharing or how they communicate. So
it's funny, I just get a feeling.
Yeah,
because, you
me
know,
too.
I've met so many people that are amazing on video. And then I just get a feeling, and I'm like, okay, you know. And
yeah, do I want them in my life that much? Yeah.
Well, and I just think that, you know, listen, I think every single one of us, you know, has miscalculations and misjudgments and makes mistakes and all that. And I don't believe we're our mistakes. I believe we're our intentions, you know?
Absolutely. And we can shift our intentions at any moment.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you believe in yourself, especially in a moment like right now where the future is right in front of you and it is swirling with endings and with beginnings? That's always how I feel in the summer, right? Summer is supposed to be this awesome time where we relax, we dial it down. If you're lucky and you can get to the beach, that's fantastic, or a pool. But when I'm at the beach, you know what I'm thinking about? My freaking future and the endings and the beginnings. And today, I want to throw how you believe in yourself in the middle of all these endings and beginnings. And how do you believe in yourself when you haven't even started taking the actions? How do you believe in yourself when you don't know how this thing is going to turn out that you really want to do? Well, my guest today, she's a super close friend of mine, and she is somebody you want to hear from right now. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about none other than Jamie Kern Lima. She's the founder of It Cosmetics, which she started in her living room, and she sold it to L'Oreal for $1 billion. And here's the thing that I love about Jamie. Jamie is the queen of learning how to believe in yourself, because when she started It Cosmetics, she was not some influencer with daddy's money. No, 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 no. She didn't get a degree in how to start a company. She was a waitress at Denny's with terrible skin rosacea, like the bright pink kind of breakouts all over her cheeks. And it was that rosacea and that hardworking work ethic from being a Denny's waitress that made her create her own foundation. And that was the beginning of this $1 billion company that she created in her living room, It Cosmetics. And I know you're going to love hearing from her, which is why I am so excited that you're here to talk to us about your journey. You are one of my favorite human beings of all time. I cannot thank you enough, Jamie, for being here as my friend and for being here as the professor on the topic of purpose and learning how to believe in yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big, warm Mel Robbins podcast welcome to Jamie Kern Lima.
Mel, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun and real and raw, and I can't wait. And I hope it just adds so much value to everyone listening. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
There's no question, because you have those friends in your life that you don't see very often. But every time you do, it's like no time has disappeared, and you just have this like kind of twinkle on your skin because you just love being with this person. I love you so much, Jamie. I'm actually mad at you that you live so far away from me. So maybe we should just start right there.
I love you. Thank you. I feel the very same way. And one of the things I want to share, I know we're going to dive in deep on purpose. By the way, I love Purpose Professor. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it, because it's one of our biggest life questions. How do I find my purpose? But I just want to say, Mel, something really important to me that I didn't want to leave here without saying. You can edit this out if you don't like it, but everybody listening needs to know this. You are one of the rare human beings that is the same off air, behind the scenes, in your everyday life as you are in all the public things. You know what I mean? And you and I have both met so many celebrities and so many people with millions and millions of followers, and it's very rare they're the same. And one of the things I love so much about you is you are even more funny, even more intelligent and brilliant and kind and raw and real in real life. So that congruency is like 1 in a billion. And I love you, and I'm just grateful to be here for you.
Wow. Okay.
Just that.
I think the episode's over now. Now, we got to go back in time because, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because the entire mission of this show is to empower and inspire you listening to us right now to create a better life, whatever that means for you, to take the simple steps that sometimes feel impossible to pursue your dreams, to improve your health, to create greater connections, to believe in yourself. And Jamie truly is not only the professor of purpose, but her life story is a demonstration in cultivating belief in your ideas, belief in your intuition, belief in God, belief that things will turn out. And so I want to go back in time because, I've heard you on the stages that you speak around the world talk about how you started as a waitress in Denny's, and then from waitressing at Denny's pursued a dream that you had of being on television. And as a fellow former waitress, I would love to start there.
Yeah, waitress at Denny's, full uniform, name tag to prove
Oh,
it.
I forgot they had uniforms.
Full uniform.
What was your favorite thing on the menu?
Oh gosh, I love the pancakes. You know what? Just like simple. It's so funny how our steps are ordered, I think, in life. And so often, I remember being a waitress at Denny's. I remember feeling and maybe maybe someone listening to us can relate to this right now. You have this feeling inside of you like there's something more I'm supposed to do, but you don't know what it is yet. And you doubt it might be possible. And I remember being waitress at Denny's and just feeling like I have these big dreams, but not quite knowing like, how do I believe I'm worthy of them yet? And it was this big season in my life. At the same time, Mel, the kitchen at the Denny's I worked at was a disaster. Like they would take an hour to get pancakes out.
Hmm.
So I learned to talk to people so that they wouldn't leave. They often did leave, or they'd throw like a dime and a penny on the table and leave.
As your tip, as if it's your fault
Yeah,
that the food were.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
But it's so funny how, years later when I ended up launching my own business, I'm like, oh, I've got to get the operations right or nothing else matters. It's just those little things we learn along the way. But yeah, after that, I thought my whole life I would have a talk show. I watched Oprah in my living room growing up, so I thought for sure I would share other people's stories with the world. So I went into did all the jobs, saved up all my money to pay for school, and push grocery carts in the grocery parking lot, sliced meat in the deli, all those fun jobs, and then found myself in what I thought was my dream job, working in TV news. And I thought, this is it, right? And what I didn't realize was I was about to enter this huge season of setback in my life, of self doubt. I have a skin condition called rosacea. And for me, it started getting really red, really bumpy. And I would be anchoring the news live, thinking, like, okay, this is it, this is it. And I started hearing in my earpiece, from my producer, there's something on your face. There's something on your face. You
Oh
need
my
to wipe it
God.
off. You need to, and I was live on television, right? And I would glance down during the commercial break and I saw, oh, the makeup is breaking up on my face and these big red bumps are coming through. And it started this season that felt like setback. But so often in life, the seasons that feel like setbacks are actually setups for what we're called to do.
Okay, stop right there. Did you hear that? The seasons of your life that are setbacks are often setups for what you're called to do. I want to just make sure everybody heard that. And I want to take a highlighter and also highlight something that you said about being a waitress at Denny's. And it's this: you said our steps are ordered.
Mhm.
So, can you explain what that means, particularly to somebody who's listening,
Yeah.
who may feel like, I know I'm meant for something greater.
Yes.
Why the hell am I at this step? And this does not feel like it is like on the path of where I'm supposed to go. So,
Mm,
what do you mean by the fact that our steps are ordered?
yeah. I believe, everything in life
Yep.
is happening for us, even when it doesn't make sense.
Ugh. Can
Um,
we just, what do you mean happening for us?
I
So, to
think,
somebody that's like really in it, Jamie,
yes, yes.
what does that mean?
Let me frame it around our topic of purpose, right?
Okay.
So often people feel empty because they feel like, oh, my purpose needs to be some job. It needs to be my job, or it needs to be this grand thing I haven't figured out yet. But for those of us that have accomplished a goal we always dreamed of, we get to it and we're like, oh, this isn't it, right? It's never, in my opinion, purpose is never this big goal necessarily. Purpose is so often when we're able to serve the person we once were, or serve in a way for something we've gone through. And here's what I mean. I think our purpose can be like, oh, wow, I went through a really freaking hard season in my
Mm,
life. And I now am actually realizing I'm born to be a generational cycle breaker in my family.
mm, mm-hmm.
That is an incredible purpose, right? Purpose can be like, oh, I've been having a hard season for a long time. And when I actually just take a minute and say hi to someone else who's lonely, maybe it's like in the coffee line at Starbucks, maybe it's the neighbor down the street, whatever it is, you feel in your gut a sense of fulfillment, like a sense of alignment when you're doing something in your purpose.
Mm.
And I think that the big mistake people make is they think it's this end goal, right? A lot of times when people hear my story and they hear the, oh, Denny's waitress builds $1 billion company, they think my purpose was to be some big entrepreneur.
It wasn't?
It wasn't.
What was it?
in the journey of how I did it,
Yeah.
I took this massive risk, right? Taking my makeup off on national television when I was told not to, and being brave enough to be seen and helping other women realize that they're worthy and enough exactly as they are, seeing them as who they are. To me, that is my purpose. And in doing that, it just a byproduct of that with It Cosmetics is we built a company with millions and millions and millions and millions of customers. And what's wild is 5% of our customers actually have skin issues, like I do. 95% don't. It's just that they felt seen and connected with something that spoke to their soul, right? For me, being willing to say, here I am exactly as I am, no makeup, and, all my skin issues. I think people connected with that feeling of, oh, I'm enough exactly as I am.
You know what else I think is a really important part of your story? It is waitressing.
Yeah,
It's pushing carts in a supermarket.
yeah,
It's working in the back house of a restaurant. That's
yes,
my story too. Helping my best friend on her paper route, bussing tables. And I think when you work in retail or you work in a service job
yeah,
and you feel at times invisible,
mm,
you start to realize how important it is to treat everybody with respect and kindness, that
yes,
there is no work that is beneath you. And when you can bring that level of service to the job that you have right now, even if you hate it, even if people treat you like garbage, even if the back of the house is not getting those pancakes out on time and
yes,
people are angry, if you can bring a sense of grace and service and just humility to those roles, I think it changes how you show up when things start working out because you don't ever forget what it's like to be treated like shit
yes.
because somebody was mad that their pancakes weren't out on time.
Yes. Yes. And also, you and I have had this experience where we've truly gotten to see and be almost every type of person in every
Yeah.
type of environment. And so now it's like whether it's me building a business or you building one of the top shows in the world, one of the top shows in the world, I feel part of that was like, oh, we understand who's listening and watching you right
Yes.
now. I
Yes.
understand who real people are who built, who bought my products. And
Yeah.
and so when you mention steps are ordered, it's like, no matter where you are in your life right now, what you're going through, I believe every piece of it, whether it's, oh, someone just, cut me off in a parking lot and screamed at me, or, oh, whatever it might be you're going through, all of those things are happening for you, I believe,
I love
so
that.
that you're amassing this toolbox of understanding and getting strong enough and equipped enough for the purpose you step into.
Amazing. So, Professor of Purpose, Jamie Kern Lima, right there. That's your takeaway number one. The steps are ordered. Believe in that.
Mm,
And this moment is helping you, it's giving you something. So, that
yeah.
is one major tool that you used along the way. Let's go back to that moment because I think you were 28 years old, right?
Mhm.
When you're sitting on television in Seattle.
Yeah.
You are a local news anchor, you're living the dream, you're on your way, and you are now starting to have this nightmare happen
Yes.
where your rosacea is breaking through on camera in front of everybody
Yeah.
the makeup that they put on you.
Yes.
And you've got people in your ear telling you there's something wrong with your face.
Yes.
And you're realizing, holy cow, the makeup that they've put on my face cannot cover the rosacea and the skin issues that I have. So,
Yeah.
what do you do in that moment?
Well, the first thing I did was start freaking out, right? And I like literally I started entering this season of self-doubt where I would be live on the air, anchoring the news, thinking thoughts in my head like, "Oh, am I going to get fired? Are viewers changing the channel right now? Like, am I costing the company ratings?" Right? So it was this
Could you
big.
feel those moments when you could feel like the makeup not kind of like disappearing? Like there were moments when I used to be a commentator for CNN, I was premenopausal, where I could feel the hot flash coming.
Yeah. I didn't feel it until they said it in my ear and in my
Oh.
earpiece. And then what would start to happen was I would get so nervous and stressed
Mm.
out because I kept trying to cover it during commercial breaks. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears.
Oh.
So what I remember is like anchoring the news live, and sometimes you have to be happy, tell this happy story, or you're serious telling. And I just remember my heart beating in my ears, hoping people weren't changing the channel.
Oh
And
my
and
God.
it started this thing where I, would spend it's funny. I was anchoring the news, and people think when you're doing that you must have all this money, but you really don't get paid much at all. And I
No.
took my little paycheck that I had and started spending it on department store makeup, professional artistry makeup, drugstore makeup. I couldn't find anything that worked, and I had this idea one day, like, oh, if I can't find anything that works for me, there's probably a whole lot of other people out there that feel like makeup doesn't work for them. And it was sort of this idea where I was like, if I could figure out how to make something that worked for me, it helped a whole lot of people. And that was my knowing, or this gut feeling. But then my head, Mel, was like, oh, but you got no money, you got no connections, no one in the beauty industry, you're unqualified. So I sat in this place, right? And we're talking about purpose. I had this gut feeling like I was supposed to go for this thing, but then my head was like, oh, but here's all the reasons why you're not qualified to do it. Plus, you're in your dream job, right? And I sat between those two. And it wasn't until I had this big aha moment of why I needed to do it that pushed me over the edge.
Okay, so what is the aha moment?
Yeah, so I realized one day, I'm like, this makes no sense. There are thousands of makeup companies out there. How does nothing work for me, right? Then I had this moment where I realized I've never seen a model with bright red bumpy skin saying, selling makeup. Like, you always see these photoshopped, airbrushed
Yeah.
models. And I realized, Mel, like, wow, my whole life I've actually loved those beauty commercials, and I love seeing the magazines, and I always aspired to look like them, but deep down inside, they always made me feel like I wasn't enough.
Mm.
And I had this moment. I was literally on the news set when this happened, where I was like, wait a minute. What if it's not just about launching a makeup product? Like what if I could actually figure out how to do it, which I had no idea how, and I had no money. But it's like, what if I could actually launch a product that works for me? And what if I actually put real people as models, like every age, shape, size, skin tone, skin challenge? What if I use them as models, call them beautiful, and mean it for every little kid out there who's about to start doubting themselves, and every grown woman who still does, and that deep source of pain from how I was feeling not enough, and what could I do about it? That, in my opinion, is one of the strongest ways to find your purpose. It's what has just destroyed you or hurt you that you've maybe made it through,
Yeah.
and how can you now use that making it through to help someone who's going through it?
Okay. That's like a mic drop moment from our professor of purpose, Jamie Kern Lima. So again, I like to unpack these things to make
Yeah.
sure this is a I always say this is not just a listening podcast, it's a doing podcast. And I want to make sure nobody's left behind.
Yes.
And there was billions of dollars worth of wisdom that you just dropped. And so I want to try to unpack it for anybody that is listening to this and you have this sense that you're made for more.
Yes.
So one of the things that I heard is look in your life and see what problems or frustrations or things that you're struggling with that feel like a setback. And Jamie gave you the example of the rosacea on her skin and her inability to find something that actually could help her solve this issue of being able to cover it up so that she could do her dream job. And that setback is a setup for something new. And then get out of your own sort of selfish or self-loathing or the self-excuses and the self-pity and remind yourself that there are 8 billion people on this planet now. There are other people that are dealing with this.
Yeah.
And that if you can figure out how to put your energy into making this better for yourself and you bring other people into the fold with you, you now have something that's worth working on because it helps you and it's going to help other people. And I also want to point something out that Jamie will not tell you, but I sure as hell will. And that is that this was about 14 or 15 years ago. So we're talking 2007, 2008, correct?
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, Jamie Kern Lima is the reason why we have this real beauty movement. There always has to be the first person, and she was it. So when you look around the internet and social media and you see people doing naked faces, that was not something people did in 2007. It was all airbrush. It was all perfection. That was the beauty standard. There were no plus size or curvy models. That was not a thing back then. And so you've got a woman who is sitting in Seattle, who has no experience and no money, deciding that she is going to not only figure out how to create a makeup line for people who have issues with their skin, but that she's going to do something nobody has ever done, which is put real, normal people like you and me into her campaigns when she finally gets this figured out. And she's going to show people what her skin actually looks like in order to sell it. I mean, that was a revolutionary idea. She was the first. And I'm telling you this because you could be the first. You have something inside of you that is a problem, something that you can solve. And you could be the first to change the way that people think about an issue. And so, Jamie, let's pick up the story, because how do you go from this aha moment, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, to doing something? Because I
Yes.
think some of us have aha moments, right?
Yep. And then we
But we
doubt
don't do
him.
anything.
Yes, because we doubt him. We
Yes.
doubt him. We think like, oh, someone's already done it.
Yes.
Or, oh, whatever. First of all, if you're out there right now and you think, oh, you have an idea or a way you want to show up in the world, or someone else you want to help, but you think, oh, someone's already done it. Literally, there's only one of you in the entire universe, which by definition means no one has ever done it the way you're going to do it. So when I launched this,
Say that again, Jamie, for the people that are like, whoa, 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 kids, calm down. Wait, Jamie just said something. I was doing my dishes. Say that again. Talk about the fact that this matters.
This is huge because I think the biggest reason we talk ourselves out of things is we think, oh, someone's already done it.
Yes.
Someone's already done it before, who must be smarter than me or more talented or more whatever it is than me. And what I have learned and then proven, and I want to tell you too about I'm going to get so excited, Mel, because when you do this thing, like, don't be shocked then when there's millions and millions of rejections and people don't get it, right? Because it's never been done before, right?
Oh, yes.
Because there's only one of you. There's only one of you doing it the way you're going to do it. But just to recap that, there is literally only one of you in the entire universe, right? And so if you are going to show up to this world authentic, that means whatever you do, if it's authentic to you, it's actually by definition, it's never been done before, right? And so when you show up that way, don't be surprised if not everyone gets it right away. Or, in my case, all the experts I put on pedestals all said no, that this idea of how I wanted to connect with women, they thought it wouldn't work and they thought I wouldn't therefore make them any money.
But can I ask you a question real quick? How did you go from the aha
Yes.
to starting? So what did that look like? Like, because I think like if you're in this space where, let's just use an example. You've never actually, you don't know the first, you have this thing about catering that you just can't get it out of your head. You want to do these events, you've never actually done this because you had never done anything with makeup. You had no idea what you were doing.
Yep.
You have an idea and you have an aha moment. What was the first thing that you did to start to make this real?
So leaning on that, why I had to do it and why it felt like it was going to be part of my purpose was a big thing that helped me actually take the risk, quit my job.
Wait, you quit your job because you had an aha moment?
Yeah, it was deep. I was like, if I had
What did it feel like?
It felt like if I didn't do it, I would wake up the rest of my life with this pain in my gut, this longing, knowing I was created for more. It felt like if I didn't do it, I would have the pain of regret. And if I did do it, I might have the pain of failure and maybe the pain of embarrassment and then maybe the pain of, oh, wow, that doesn't feel like it went how I thought it was. I knew it was this big risk. I knew I was leaving what I thought was my dream job.
Why did you have to quit your job? Just curious.
It was literally from day one, I was all in. Like I dove all in. I knew if I was going to do this, I needed to just go all in on it. I started, I do not recommend this, but I started working like 100-hour weeks from the beginning. I was so freaking passionate about it. Like I couldn't stop thinking about what if I can actually figure this out. what if I can literally, because it became a
So
big
did you have
dream.
any savings? Like, do you have a little bit of
Very
savings?
little
Because you didn't
savings.
pay yourself for the first 3 years that you did this.
First 3 years. So basically, my husband and I wrote this business plan, right?
Yep.
Quit our jobs, dove all in our living room. We poured all of our savings into it. I thought, Mel, and this is for someone watching us right now. I know this. I thought if I can figure the product out, it's going to be huge.
Right.
And then I realized, like, oh, being an entrepreneur or launching a dream is not always that easy. We poured every penny we had into it, and once we actually created a product, and we were scrappy. If you
And
want to
how
know
did you
how,
create a product? Like, are you in your
yeah.
kitchen buying stuff at the grocery store, or how does this even work?
Okay, so no, so so first, I love that technology is right there, right? So researching how are makeup formulations made, who makes them, what are the FDA regulatory compliance, all the unsexy stuff I know nothing about. Just diving into the research phase of how does this happen, and then what I learned is that manufacturers are makeup companies' closest held secrets, right? Like closest held secrets. They won't disclose who they work with, but a
Hmm.
lot of these big manufacturers work with all the top brands that you see or a handful of them.
Gotcha.
So I
So
started,
so are you saying that all of the brands and top brands that you see are basically manufactured by a handful of companies?
yes,
Okay,
handful of
got it.
companies, and then some do it in-house as well.
Gotcha.
So what I did was scrappy. I walked into a Sephora. I wrote down the name of every single brand in there, went home. I had no money, right? Cold call every single brand and saying like, "Oh, I'm looking for a really great manufacturer. Could you let me know who you manufacture?" And then they hang up on me. You know what I mean? One after another, after another, after another. And I got this really small brand in a totally different kind of positioning where the girl who answered said, "Oh, here's who we use. They're in New York City, blah, blah, blah." So that was my first manufacturer. Reached out to them, had a meeting in person, had no money, poured this idea out to them. They took a risk making me samples. And that's how it started, was just really being scrappy, and trying to figure it out. All of our money had went into the product development formula and the
Yep.
advisory board of the product.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, now we have a product that works for me, right? This was after hundreds of formula iterations. I thought that was going to be it.
So is this like year 1 or year 2? Like, how long did this take?
Yeah, it took a good first year to get
Okay.
that product. And then what I started doing was sending it to everyone I thought was just going to believe in me instantly. So I sent it to Sephora and Ulta Beauty and all the department stores and all of the online retailers, QVC, which is, live television shopping channel. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be huge. Every single one of them said no after no after no after no. And to your point, it became 3 years of not being able to pay myself, 3 years of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's, of crying myself to sleep at night.
Were you and your
Um,
husband like fighting like crazy? Like, you should go back to work. You should, but why do we do that? Like, were you like doing
you
that?
you want to know what it was? We
Yeah.
still believed in it, but we weren't sure how we were going to make it. It was like friends and family that were like, wait, you quit your job? Are you sure you should have quit your job? Or wait, you still haven't made any money? Like it's been 3 years, right? So you hear all of this, the voices get so loud.
Yeah.
The loudest, though, were my own self doubt. Sometimes we take a chance and go for something because our gut is telling us to do it. And then all of a sudden, you face all this opposition and you start to question, is my gut wrong? Is my knowing wrong? And there were so many times where I would literally get this another brutal no from, Sephora or QVC or whoever it was. And I would just literally cry myself to sleep. I would pray about it and be like, God, I feel like I'm supposed to be doing this, but nothing is going right.
I want to dive into one specific thing, which is your language is precise. You talk about, loving yourself and recognizing beauty and trust and intuition and even the term seasons. I think, I want to explore that in a second because sometimes we talk about our life being a certain way, but when it really, if you step far enough back and you look, there's seasons, and just like, it's 41 and raining here in Seattle right now. It's going to be 75 and sunny in 3 months. And we forget that. But I want to go back to language because you talk so much about it. And I'm wondering, did you have the language before you became successful, or was the success because was a success because of your language, or did you develop it after you were successful looking backwards?
Hmm.
The way you're programming your mind, I can tell it's so, maybe it's not intentional or maybe it's not precise, but it appears from where I'm sitting that these words of, trusting, intuition, love, care, values, like those shine or are very dim in the brightest or darkest days of our lives. And I'm wondering, is that a programming that you learned across those 3 years? I've seen the pictures of your living room where your office, as you were, where Marie worked. Uh, like, what came first, your success or the language?
Yeah, I think in parallel, because uh, I try to always pay attention to what is it that's making me feel um, uh, like this is right, and what's not feeling fulfilling, and 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 what I mean by that is, uh, there were times where I was doing 100-hour weeks for years, and I learned, oh, following sales numbers didn't feel fulfilling. But reading customer letters where women are bawling their eyes out or saying, they feel confident for the first time in a long time, or that they don't even wear makeup, they don't want to buy our products, but that they feel beautiful because we're showing real women whatever it was, right? When I read those things, I actually realize, oh, what I'm doing is bigger than myself. And I feel uh, the day more. I
Mhm.
feel like what I'm doing matters. I feel like, oh, I can't just show up again and do another show on autopilot, because this isn't about me. It's about the blessing of someone else sharing this. So it's like I learned what felt good and what felt right and what didn't. And I think for a lot of us, whether you're a creator or maybe you're someone who's achiever based. A lot of my friends who are achievers, which is a lot of entrepreneurs, we kind of all learn this, that if we just focus on that big goal or that big achievement, it's kind of never enough. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, then what's next? And it never fills your soul. And along the journey, just learning what fills my soul and paying attention to it. And part of that, in terms of language, part of that was also learning that the only way I'm going to actually make an impact is to also not make it about me, right? So even just, what's one thing that started happening naturally is when I would go on QVC, I didn't talk about, like, I would talk, I guess you is probably the most common word I would use, because I knew it wasn't about me. And even to the moment, that where we got this one shot, I had this realization, Chase, in this biggest moment probably in my career, which was after crying in the parking lot, freaking out, all the things for a week before the airing. I remember walking in the studio, and that one shot, that 10-minute window, I saw the clock on the floor that said 10 minutes. I had thought that I knew what I was going to do in the 10 minutes. I had produced this whole thing, written it all out, like start to finish. I was going to do this demonstration on my wrist, and that I'd practiced in my bathroom mirror to show how our concealer is better than the top 2 department store concealers, all this stuff. And I walk in the studio, and the host, because they pair you with a QVC host, and then you're the guest, right? That's supposed to explain your product. The host was awesome and amazing. And I shared with her what I wanted to do. And this is like 2 minutes before the live show. And she says, okay, thank you, sugar, but here's what we're going to do. And so everything I had planned was out the window. And I was just like, okay, like, and I knew I could trust. I mean, they're so good at their jobs. I knew I could trust her, but it's also just scary when everything's on the line. And so as we stood there in the studio live, right, about to go live to 100 million homes, and I see this clock, and it's like 10 minutes. And then I learned, right, I learned that you're not guaranteed the 10 minutes. If you start selling and you're a minute or two in and you're not hitting their numbers, your minutes jump. So you're down to the 2 minutes, and you just lost 6 minutes, which is a lot of money, like all the things. And so there's so much pressure. And So I remember the 10-minute clock, and I remember it was like 9:59, 9:58, and I was like we're live on
It's
national
happening.
television,
This
right?
is real.
Yeah,
This is
it's
real.
happening. And when you talk about language and about where and when it develops, for me, I remember the moment in real time of this happening, where we were like 9:58, 9:57, 9, and I was like, I would go in and out of being bigger than myself or being about myself, and this I think is important for any creator, any person, um, any leader, any business owner, um, any person really. But what I mean by this is, I remember in that live moment with all the pressure in the world, I would make it about myself for a second and think things like, is my dress too tight on national television? I remember feeling like sweat running. This is so gross, but I was so nervous, like sweat running down my back. And I was like, are my Spanx going to catch the sweat? Like, so I start thinking these thoughts, which is about me. And I knew in that moment, if I even waste any of my time and my one shot making this about me, I'm done. Like I really wanted to shift culture in the beauty industry. I really wanted to do something bigger than myself. And so in that moment, I knew that, and I knew it had to be about her. And so, and so then I remember walking over to all the models that were all ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones, and calling them beautiful and meaning it, and having this experience. I remember my bright red, bare-faced, rosacea-filled face came up on national TV. And I just remember the whole thing. And then there was like a minute left and the host says, the deep shade is almost gone. The tan shade is down to 200 units or something like that. And I was like, and then I remember at the 10-minute mark, the sold out sign came up across the screen. And I literally start sobbing on TV. And my husband came running through the double doors and of the studio. And I'm like crying. I'm like, real women have spoken. And he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And this whole thing. And I was just like, ah. And that one airing turned into 5 that year, 101 the next year. And we eventually got over 250 live shows a year for 8 years, and still at this moment, and built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history, and it is right now at this moment. And I only share that because it was 3 years of no's and being told you're not the right fit, and I just think that, like, no one can tell you you're not the right fit. You know what I mean? No one can tell you that your dream isn't going to work, and no one can tell you that that you're not the right fit, or that you're not, that your vision isn't going to be successful. And I think most people don't mean bad. I think they want the best for you. They're just, again, even experts sometimes just see things through their own experience. And if they've only seen one thing work before, and you're doing something novel, or you're doing something only the way you're going to do it, then just by definition, it's novel. And I think a lot of times, even experts who are amazing and meanwhile are only capable of seeing things as being successful if they've already seen them done before. And I learned that. And the last part of this, Chase, is that Alan Burke, the guy who's the head of all of beauty, right? Who said you're not the right fit. After, and then I cried myself to sleep for 3 days. After we launched on QVC, he ended up becoming a dear friend and one of my greatest mentors in my entire life. He is till this day. And after he retired from QVC, we actually hired him in a paid position on our advisory board for It Cosmetics. And so the guy who rejected me was now working for me. And to top it all off, is the last thing I'll say is, had he said yes any sooner, like sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. And had he said yes any sooner, I think we would have failed on QVC. I didn't know at the time, but we weren't operationally sophisticated enough to handle the back end of an account that large and all those things. And so, it was a blessing he said no when he did. And I think that sometimes rejection is often just grace, like serendipitous grace, wrapped in this package that really sucks.
Yeah, it's a pill that's tough to swallow at the time. But again, looking backwards, that's the way that we can connect the dots, right? We can't, that so much of this doesn't make sense. And thank you for sharing the story behind the story. I truly believe that the most important words in the world are the ones that we say to ourselves. And this, your ability to navigate rejection, your ability to, um, as you say, get quiet and still seems to be, both here in the show and in the book, like absolutely foundational.
I would love to hear just a little bit of the story between nobody believes me, everybody hates my brand, and $1.9 billion to L'Oreal. Like, something in there happened. Something went right. Could you kind of talk about how and when you finally caught traction, and what that little season was like?
So we, no after no after no after no after no, and I had entered us in this big beauty competition. It's like this. It's called CEW Beauty Awards, and it's in New York City. And it was, there's 6. So imagine this huge, like exhibition center.
Sure.
And there were 6,000 women walking the floor that are part of this organization, and all the beauty companies from around the world are all there. And it's once a year, and you get a 3-foot booth, right? And all the big products that launch all year long, all these companies enter their product in an award. The hope of being there is that all the 6,000 women walking the floors vote your product to win one of the awards. In my case, that would have meant like, oh, maybe some of the stores will take me in, or maybe I'll get press. And so we're down to like literally almost no money left. And I had entered this competition a while back, entered this annual thing. So I'm there, I'm at my 3-foot table. You're not allowed to leave your 3-foot table, and you're supposed to just demonstrate your product over and over and over for all of the people walking by. So I'm there, and all of a sudden I see QVC has this giant booth there in person. I had never met anyone in person, right? And they've been telling me no for 3 years. Alan Burke says you're not the right fit, all that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I can just like sneak away and meet someone, maybe that will help, right? And I'm sitting there like kind of disassociating myself from what's actually happening. So all these women are walking by, and I'm like talking about the product, and I'm not paying attention. I'm really just focused on how can I get to that QVC booth without getting kicked out, because you're not allowed to leave.
Sure.
So I'm like praying for the right words. I'm praying for the right timing. I keep trying to sneak away, and then the buyers are mobbed over there. So then I go back to my booth, and eventually I get over there. I talked to a buyer at QVC. She knew who I was based on not me, but the company name, because she'd gotten a million samples over the years. And I was like, I think your customers would love our product. I just pour my heart out to her. She gave me her card and said, let's set up a meeting sometime. And I thanked her. I went back to my booth. Now, in that moment, I thought, does she really mean it?
Yeah.
Is this just a courtesy? Like, here's my card.
Totally.
So I'm back there now at my booth, continuing demonstrating the product over and over. As our concealer by Under Eye, and I'm demonstrating it over and over and over, and still not paying attention, really not present, because I'm now replaying everything I wish I would have just said and all that.
Sure.
All of a sudden, a woman comes up to me. And she introduces herself, and she says, hello, my name is Miss Lisa Mason. I'm a QVC show host. She'd been a show host for 17 years. I didn't realize that earlier in the night, she'd come up to me and I was demonstrating the product with her. I didn't recognize her, and because I was not paying attention. And I was like, oh, and she goes, I just want to tell you, I think our QVC customers will love your product.
Wow.
And I looked at her, and tears started streaming down my face. I think I freaked her out, because she didn't know what I knew, which is like,
totally
I'm out of business. Everyone has said no.
Of course.
And I think I scared her, and she's like, oh, sugar. I don't have any say over if the product goes, she goes, but I want to let
it's
you know.
It's not a contract.
Yeah, totally. She goes, but I want to let you know, I love your product. And I went up to our head buyer over there, and I told her she needs to give you a chance. And I was like, thank you.
Totally.
Freaked her out. So long story short, we got a meeting. We had a meeting with the buying team, and QVC's over in Pennsylvania. So I flew out for that. We got a yes. But here's what it meant. And this part of the story, by the way, probably the biggest life lesson, business lesson I learned in the whole journey. We got a yes. And what it meant was we got one shot to go on QVC Live in this 10-minute segment. And we either had to hit their sales goal, or not come back. And here's the context, right? We're doing, 2 to 3 orders a day on our website.
Yeah.
I learned that to hit their sales goal in that 10-minute window, we have to sell over 6,000 units of our product. Over 6,000 units, and then I learned that the offer is a consignment offer. So what that meant was I wasn't going to get paid for the product yet. I had to figure out how to pay for, manufacture, ship in over 6,000 units of our concealer. And then if it didn't sell, I would have to take it all back and pay for it, right? So normally you would never want to say yes to that. Like there's that saying in business, never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose, and cannot afford to lose it. But we also at this point it was hundreds of no's. And it was like, okay, well, we can do it this way and go bankrupt, or we're probably going to go out of business anyway. It was that moment. Yeah. So we decided to say yes. Then we had to figure out how to pay for the inventory. So it was over 20 banks said no for an SBA loan. This tiny bank in California gave us an SBA loan just for the amount to cover just the inventory for that one QVC purchase order. So everything was on the line, is my point. Yeah. And we met with third-party consultants. And this is where one of the biggest, I think, and most difficult decisions I've ever faced happened. We met with consultants that said to us, and they help so many people sell their product on QVC or in stores, and they help a lot of people, and they're amazing, and they give you the best advice they know. And they said to me, okay, if you want a shot at doing well, here's what you need to do. You need to produce your segment this way and use this type of model, which was all flawless skin.
Of course.
I'm like, okay, but here's my thought. I go, what if I go on and I have real women, like what if I put a model in her 70s and all different shapes, ages, skin tones, and skin problems? I go, what if I take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea? And they're mortified at this idea, right? And they're saying and we would argue about it, because I'd say here's the thing, when we talk about intuition, my intuition said, here's the thing, if I'm sitting at home watching someone show a product and I don't see someone that looks like me,
totally,
how do I know it's going to work for me? Right. And I was like, this doesn't make sense that you have one age and one skin tone and flawless skin. This doesn't, but they were giving me the best advice they knew. They wanted me to win. So I was in this spot, right? So many of us get in this spot in life where our gut's telling us one thing, and then experts are telling us another.
Yeah.
And I flew out to QVC a week before this one big shot, and I got this rental car, and I every single day for a week, Jen, I sat in this rental car right out front of the QVC building. It's this huge campus, and I just watched people walk in and out of the front door, and I sat there and prayed and cried and went through all these scenarios in my head, right? Because I was like, okay, because there was so much pressure. I knew the next time I walked through those doors, I was going to walk out either bankrupt or, with my whole life changed.
Totally. No in between.
Yeah. And I just thought okay. And there were moments I know you can't fake authenticity. I know that. I know viewers are smart. I knew intuitively that the only way to succeed was to fully show up, and with that authentic mission and why I was doing what I was doing. But oftentimes we know the right thing to do, but it's also the hardest thing to do. And so there were moments in that car where I struggled with doubting my own gut. I thought thoughts okay, well, if I try it their way and then maybe it works,
sure, right,
eventually I'll try it my way. And I just remember this moment in the car where I was okay, it was this big epiphany moment where I was trying to imagine who my customer was and who is going to be watching, because QVC is live television shopping channel, but it's live to 100 million homes. And I had this moment in the car where I was I kept imagining, for whatever reason, a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry who was so busy that she forgot she mattered and forgot she was beautiful. And I was I would rather have her turn on if she's going to bless me with 3 seconds of her precious time, I would rather have her turn on the television, see me showing real people that look like her and calling them beautiful and meaning it, even if she bought nothing. Like, I'd rather do that than sell a crap load of product and stand for nothing. And
Good.
so like, I knew what I had to do, and I remember, walking in the door of QVC, and I remember walking in the studio. Oh, and by the way, I learned that you're not even guaranteed your 10 minutes. Like, if I went live and all of a sudden it's not going well, and we're like a minute or two into the presentation, you might see your clock jump from 8 minutes left down to 1 minute left, like that. And I was like, and so it was so much pressure, and I had on double Spanx. I sweat through the double Spanx. I was in this dress,
Of course,
mess, because it was just, I remember, and they paired me with the host who had come up to me that day at the show.
Yeah.
And so, thank God, because I was a mess. And I remember the camera went on and I was shaking. Like, I was trying to do demonstration on my wrist with
with like you're shaking.
Yeah, my whole wrist was like Scooby-Doo when he sees a ghost, and she like grabbed my hand and she's like, "Thank you, sugar," and she took over, and they pulled my bare face. I'll never forget my bare face, bright red before shot. On national TV. And I remember going to the models. I didn't know how it was going, but I knew I wasn't cut yet.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the models, like all ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges, and calling them beautiful and meaning it. And we got down to the last, because remember, by this point, there were amazing makeup artist brands that are phenomenal. And then there was a lot of other beauty brands, but no one was going on and just saying like, here's my skin challenges and they're beautiful. And if you want to, have your, products that help you look like yourself, in your natural skin, this works. And like, it was a totally different thing than what had been being done. And I remember we had about a minute left in the presentation, and I heard the host say like, the tan shade's almost gone, the deep shade's almost sold out. And I was like freaking out. And then right at the 10-minute mark, this giant sold out sign came up across the screen. I start sobbing on national TV, and then they cut from me and go to like Dyson vacuum or something. And my husband came running through the double doors of the QVC studios, and I'm like sobbing, and I'm like, real women have spoken. And he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And I was like, ah. And that one earring turned into 5 that year, right? So this is that in between space of hundreds of no's so that one airing turned into 5 that year and 101 the next year. And then we did over, and still do, over 250 live shows a year. And within, I think it was 4 years, we built the biggest beauty brand in QVC's history. And I only share that because it was years of them saying no, and not just no, but you're not the right fit.
A firm no. Like, we've really thought it through. We've all discussed it. It's unanimous. It's a hard no.
It's a hard no.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, you are not the right fit, which really just sounds like someone saying you're not enough over and over and over. Right. And
but then to have such success in the exact same space is so special. I mean, that is so incredible. That is such a great story. That is so then what? Like, you're telling this great story. I'm just like listening, like you're like I'm at story time.
We eventually got a yes from every single place that had said no. And some of them happened shortly after our QVC success. Others, like in the case of Sephora, took a total of 6 years of no's to eventually get a yes. And so then we kept building and building. And, I had this whole dream of trying to shift the definition of beauty in the beauty industry. And so I was like, we've got to go global. And so out of this office that we finally made it out of our living room. We were in a townhouse. And then we made it out of there and got an actual office space. And then we started growing and growing, and we grew to over 1,000 employees and started launching international. Like, I couldn't believe my own success for a while. And I thought at any moment it may come crashing down. So I was working 100-hour weeks for years. And I realized, like, I got to the point where I was addicted to work, and we had tried to have kids for a decade, and I was having miscarriages, and all of these things were going on where my husband and I realized, like, when he would call me, I thought it was a work call when I'd see his name on my phone. Like it was to the point where work was our whole world. And so part of, I think, learning to trust yourself is also learning when to not trust yourself. And we realized, right, that I didn't trust myself to not keep working the way my parents did growing up, frankly. And then I wanted to try and change history for myself personally. And so that was also part of the reason where I'm like, you know what, I think we need to sell the business or partner with someone. We thought about going public, but in that case, you're still running it as well. And it's kind of all on you. And so it was a big, so we started taking, when I had that realization, we started taking meetings with L'Oreal, and then they weren't interested for a long time. It was 3 years of them saying no to a potential partnership. And back to the rejection is God's protection. By the time they did want a partnership, so did a lot of other people.
Yeah.
So it was this moment where all of a sudden L'Oreal wanted to buy the company, and so did a lot of others. And so all of a sudden the price was so much higher than what it would have been.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like the stars aligned, and so that was 2016. We decided to partner with them, and then I stayed on. They made me their first woman to hold a CEO title in their 100+ year history of any brand.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it was and it was kind of a real cool experience. And everyone there is like in couture, head to toe, and all the right handbags, all the right stuff. And in the early years, so in the 3 years they were saying no to us, I would feel like, should I wear cooler clothes to these meetings?
Sure.
But what I realized is, because we stayed true to who we were, like I never started, like I was always just maybe odd
who you are
compared to who I am, compared to their culture. But by year 3 of our meetings, part of why, because we stayed authentic to who we were, because we didn't fit in, we were different than the 40 other brands they own. And so because of that, we had created something so valuable. You know what I mean? And I think
absolutely.
You hear your authenticity is your superpower. And in this case, it was in every way, shape, and form. Like, had we ever start changing who we were to listen to all the advice from the stores telling us no, or even some of the advice from L'Oreal over the years and the meetings that ended with no, if we had made those changes that didn't feel authentic to us, we probably never would have been purchased by them for that much. And we probably never would have built a company that lasted.
Do you know what's so funny about that? As you're telling that story, I have such a clear memory, because when I was, let's see, honestly, I think I was 22. I might've been 23. I went for the very first time. I don't even know if you know what this is. It's kind of in a bygone era, but there was this huge conference that traveled around, a Christian conference called Women of Faith. I don't know if you ever heard of that or went to it, but it was like an arena conference, like an arena tour. And I'd never heard of it. And well, I'd never heard of it because I think that year was its first or second year. But anyway, it came to the town that I was in. And didn't know the teachers. All the speakers were older. They were all in their like 60s and 70s, and funny and wild and irreverent. Like, I didn't know you were allowed to do that and be a Christian. I hadn't seen that version yet. And I didn't know that women could speak like that. I just never seen anything like it. I'd never seen women in kind of having agency over their own faith and gifts as communicators. That was just news to me. And so anyhow, I remember, so I went that first year to Women of Faith in an arena in Tulsa. And then 2 years later, I went to another arena. And I remember sitting, I was like way up in the nosebleeds, and I'm 24 maybe at that point. And I remember where I was sitting, like to what angle I was facing the stage, when I just had this very clear thought, like, I think that I am going to be on the stage with those women, which was an absurd thing to think, and absolutely absurd. I mean, I was a teacher. I taught 4th grade. I had never even I'd never been in adult work. I worked with 10-year-olds, and then inside marriage, I worked with students. And so at our church, I didn't even know women. Anyhow, it was so clear and persistent. It just hung on for years. And then, 8 years later, I surprisingly to myself, even move into this space as a writer and as a communicator, and then ultimately as a teacher and speaker. And so in 2015, their event, and so I'd seen them back in 1996. So in 2015, the organizers of the event got in touch with me and said, it's the farewell tour. It's the last year of Women of Faith. It had been like 20-year run. And we would love for you to join the tour for its last leg of the race. And I just remember sitting there going, what in the world? I mean, I remember that thought from 20 years earlier that didn't even make sense. It didn't even have a home. I didn't even have a board to Velcro it to. Like I wasn't even in that world. I didn't even know about it. And so I love listening to your story, and it's giving me such like nostalgia in my own heart for sometimes the ways that if we're still enough and quiet enough, if we'll listen and trust it, there's a knowing that we are given maybe 20 years before we need it. Maybe 20 years before it's even going to ever come to fruition. And yet there it is. And thank you for including that part of your story.
Listen,
Always.
I mean, you are preaching. I'd rather die. I'd rather die than compromise my gut.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel good enough. Like if you're going to lose on your own sword.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing in the world to do is to lose based on somebody else's advice. I really believe that.
Yes. And you know what else to that? Don't even necessarily think because you're losing right now that you've lost. And what I mean by that is,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah. Oh no, I was gonna say, Gary, like, so this is wild, right? So Alan Burke, the guy I just mentioned, after we finally got on to QVC, so he's the guy that said, no, I cried myself to sleep.
Yeah, I got it.
After we got onto QVC, that one airing turned into 5 that year, 101 the next year. And then I did over 250 live shows a year for 8 years in a row. And we built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history. So it is right now at this moment that you and I are talking. And when Alan Burke retired, and by the way, he ended up becoming one of my greatest mentors after we launched on QVC. He's so brilliant, to be honest. And after he retired, we actually hired him in a paid position on our advisory board at Cosmetics. So the guy who rejected me is now working for me.
I love that. First of all, that's amazing. I need a much more interesting one. At his retirement dinner, did he publicly say that you were his biggest miss? And then later...
So here's the funny thing. He would say that, and he has said that, but here's what I know. I know that had he said yes sooner, I know that I didn't know what I didn't know. Had he said yes sooner, we would have failed.
You think so?
I do, because what I learned later.
As somebody who's so intuitive, why do you not believe that a year earlier you would have gone with your gut?
I would have, but at the time, and maybe this was just serendipitous grace, but at the time, what I learned later was the QVC's massive, right? Like the one airing I got, I had to sell 6,000 units in 10 minutes to hit the sales goal or not come back. What I learned later was like, had he said yes any sooner, we were not operationally sophisticated enough to handle an account that size on the back end. So maybe that was just serendipitous grace.
I see. You might have sold them up front, but logistically you were not prepared.
Right. Yeah. And so I feel like that was divine timing in that case. And one other thing to share too, and by the way, I knew in my gut we were supposed to be on QVC, but for 3 years they said no, right? And then we ended up building the biggest beauty brand in QVC's history. And I just want to share that because I know there's people listening right now that think like, oh, I'm listening to my gut, I feel strongly, but I have no proof around me that my business is succeeding or that I'm not getting the traction I want.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.